Hello, podcast lovers. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm your host, Žana, and today I am so excited because me and Ral, we met at her amazing mastermind group on LinkedIn. I joined her group because at the time, every entrepreneur needs a mentor, and I felt Miss Ral was a great personality to pick her brain. So, first of all, I'm so grateful that you're here and thank you because I know you're extremely busy. So, I'm really appreciative of you even agreeing to be on my podcast as my guest. It's my absolute honor to welcome you today. So, hello and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Žana. It's a pleasure to be here, and you're lovely, and I think we're going to have a great time.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so ready because I was so looking forward to this. I know we had some scheduling problems on my end, and so I'm so happy that you had the patience to work with me on this because I did not want it to miss out on this conversation. Because really, in all honesty, when I first met you and we had conversations in your group, I could immediately tell that no matter what question I had asked, you seemed to have every time an answer where I was like, hmm, is there actually a question that she doesn't know? It felt like that you were walking lexicon, and you for everything and any problem. And because it wasn't just me that brought ideas and questions to the group, there was others around us too. And every time when it was time for you to kind of like give your input, I felt like for everybody, you always had the right thing and you were able to figure out so fast what seemed to be the holdback or the issue or the little bit of not seeing it ourselves, the breakthrough, the missing piece, the little Lego piece. Like when you lose the one piece, it sucks because you can't
Yeah.
put the whole
Well,
thing together.
yeah. Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment, and I think it's a result of having lived such a long time and, and having had so much experience. I've been there, done that on a lot of these issues especially for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurialism is a passion of mine, so
Mm.
it's something that I live and breathe.
Yeah, that's
And
why you are a serial entrepreneur too.
yeah, and over 40 years. Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. What an accomplishment. Or do you ever stop and actually be like, oh, I did that. Good for me. Kind of like
Yes,
that self-praise. Do you do that? I think
I
that's very
do.
healthy to do.
I do now. I didn't used
Yeah.
to, but yeah,
Mm.
I do now.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
are, for instance, other things in your entire career of like, going through one business to the other and maintaining one in the other, and maybe also in between helping other people with their businesses. But what will be one thing that you, like you just said, did not do then, but you certainly are doing it now? And that could be either for yourself or maybe for your clients or like an outlook or a mindset shift or something. What would that be?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think giving myself grace
Mm.
to make mistakes, to have little failures, and not spend a lot of time getting out the wet noodle and beating myself up. That's something I had to learn along the way because I was very good at the self-flagellation, like, oh God, I really screwed up, and I just, oh, this, I'm never going to be able to get over this, something that I did wrong. And I gradually learned that, you know, that's a learning experience. I need to take the lesson, look for the lesson in it, and then move on. And, take responsibility for whatever I did and pick the lumps and apologize or whatever the situation was. And then giving myself grace and just accepting that, yeah, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make mistakes. And it's
Yeah.
okay. It's part of life. It's part of learning. And,
Yeah. Yeah. I
love
really
myself anyway.
Yes, wow. I really love the sentence that you just said, take the lump and apologize if necessary. I think that's very big in general, just in general speaking, like just really having that courage inside of us to just really say, you know what? I know that this was not okay for me to do at all, and this is my bad. I completely apologize. But I'm wondering that self-reflecting part when that kicks in, right? Because I know for me, when I was younger, I mean, I intentionally inside, I guess I knew I was wrong, but having that courage and really step up and like voicing that I'm wrong, it was very tough for me to combine that with my ego back in the days when I was younger. So were there ever situations in your entrepreneurialism, in your path, where really it took you a moment to kind of know that actually your act was not okay? Or how did you learn? I guess my question is, how did you learn to really believe yourself and stand strong in yourself and saying like, okay, that was not okay of me, like that
Oh gosh.
self-reflecting?
Yeah. It took a long time. And I remember in my really early 20s, I was always right. I
Right.
don't care what it was. I was right and I knew better than
Mm.
anybody else. And as I moved into my 30s, I think I started to grow up a little bit. And I had some fabulous mentors. I read some fabulous books, listened to cassette tapes in those days. That's what we had. We're talking about the late 80s. And I would listen to people and realize that, okay, I'm okay. I'm all right, even though I made a mistake. And sometimes it was
Mhm.
not most of the time it was not an intentional mistake. I
Right.
just screwed up. And maybe I did something wrong that hurt a client or a friend or whatever, and just being able to know that even though that was not the way I wanted it to be, I'm still okay, and
Mm.
that act or that incident does not define me. But it took years and years for me to figure that out, and so there
Mm.
was a lot of agony and anxiety and um, misery before I
Mm.
learned to just say, okay, yeah, I can accept that. I can take responsibility and I can do what's right and then move on. And
Yeah.
I say that one of the real breakthroughs for me was a course that I took in 1987. And the teacher was Robert Kiyosaki, who
Mm.
later became famous for writing Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But in those days, he was just giving workshops. The workshop was called Money and You. And I took it because, oh, I need to make more money. My business is struggling, and I need to be able to get better at making money. This will teach me. And actually, I learned more about the you part than the money. Although the money part, definitely there were things that helped me with that too. But there were some exercises in that 3-day course that were uh, gut wrenching. I mean, he really had us digging deep, and it was quite quite a revolutionary kind of approach, and it changed me, totally
Wow.
changed me. I've never been the same since that 3.5 day weekend. And one of those
Mhm.
big lessons was about taking responsibility. And it's huge. It's just absolutely huge. And
Mhm.
I can't say that I've always done it 100% right since then, but there's a part of me that knows and remembers, and then I go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this is what I need to do now. And
Mm.
whether it's with my kids, with my husband, my family, business, our staff, customers, everyone, the more you
Mhm.
can take responsibility and own what you need to own, and other people need to own what they need to own too.
Right. Right.
But you
That
can't
would be
make them.
ideal.
You can't make
Yeah.
them. So all you
Yeah.
can do is for yourself. And then I kept on learning. I Something about me, I think maybe ever since I was born, I've just been such a learner. I love learning. And when I was 8 years old, I would go to the library and take out the maximum number of books that they would lend. And they were the fattest, thickest books that I could carry, and I walk them home, carrying these armloads of books, and I devour them. And that's
Wow.
kind of who I was. you know, I'd rather read a book than go out and play.
Yeah. That is so cool. That is so cool. And I also feel like, with the part of really taking responsibility, I think a good portion of being empathic, just really having empathy on the situation or on the other person that is perhaps doing you wrong, or doing something that is not okay towards you. And to just have a different mindset of like, I hear and I see what you're saying and doing, and I don't like it and I won't accept it. but I will extend grace to you because obviously you're still in some working process with yourself, instead of, how we can right away assume this was done to us on purpose. This
Yeah.
happened to us on purpose, versus having the mindset of like, this is actually happening for me, even though it doesn't
Oh,
feel good, because I might just really see where I'm being still triggered. And if I'm actually being triggered by your behavior, I wonder, is that you or is it me?
oh,
Because how can you,
yes.
like, how can you
There's
have
so
that much
many.
power to trigger me, but I still feel triggered? But how is that possible if you don't have power over my thoughts, that you're
Well,
still triggering me?
one of the things that I learned, I think it might have been from Robert Kiyosaki, but I'm not sure. It might have been from another workshop,
Yeah.
was that when other people do trigger you, it's basically a mirror. They're holding up a mirror and you're looking at something about yourself that you don't like, and
Mm.
whatever they're doing is in some way triggering that in you. And so other lessons were things like, don't blame, don't judge, just
Mm.
just accept it. And yet another thing is that in any relationship, each side has 100% responsibility for what happens.
Mm.
It's not all me and it's not all you, but there's 100%. You kind of have to meet in the middle. And if everybody takes 100% responsibility for what they do, that's the best situation.
Yeah.
And obviously that doesn't always happen. And so sometimes we have to walk away and just kind of bless them for being where they are, and
Right.
pray that they will have a revelation or have some peace at some point, but it doesn't have to be my job to do that for them.
Mm. Yeah, that's big, because I remember situations in my own personal life where I felt the need in those situations before I want to say had my spiritual growth spurt, where I felt the need of really wanting to prove my point verbally. Like it was so important for me, not necessarily to prove my point that I'm more right than you, but for you to just understand what I was trying to tell you. That was really what I was after. And then, with time and with being more rooted and just really what you said, like applying the specific tools of just letting go and blessing them and just accepting, it almost became more like, I completely get it and it's fine, but I decide that this isn't serving me, nor is this what I have to offer, obviously, to you is serving you either. But thank you so much for this ride up till here. But now I think I'm gonna jump in another train, and I wish you the very best on your train ride wherever you go. Instead of that persistence of wanting to just really explain to somebody in any kind of verbiage, like, don't
Yeah.
you hear what I'm telling you? Don't you understand? Like, this is where I'm standing. And I think
Yes.
that's really big too. It just shows emotional intelligence on another level when you really can just not take offense, not feel that it's personally towards you, even though it's coming at you personally from the person.
And it
And to
feels
just,
personal.
yeah. And to just, but then to be like and say, this I see, this just won't happen. And, with peace, we'll just part ways
Yeah.
without the whole extra that would come with it.
Well, we tend to want closure, and I know I do. And
Right.
learning to let go of that need for the closure, that's a big one. And I still struggle with that, especially if my husband and I get into it about some things like, yeah, no, no, we've got to finish this. and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I have to step back and say, okay, no, this isn't working. So yeah, I mean, there's always room to learn and always room to grow. None of us is ever finished. So
Right.
we are all works in progress. I don't care how old you are.
Yeah.
And you need to accept that and really embrace every opportunity to learn more. I
Yeah.
do. I do. I'm
Yeah.
still spending thousands of dollars on education every year. And I love it. It's one of the gifts I give to myself.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Because, like my mom always used to tell me, the more you know, the more you worth, in a sense,
Mm,
to your own self, because you're feeding your own mind, you're feeding your own soul, you're feeding your own temple. That could be anything. It could be good vegetables, it could be a great book, it could be an educational podcast, it could be an enlightening conversation.
Yeah.
It could be really something, because I feel like, when I started to shift my mindset and I looked at every conversation, every opportunity that I would have that day to have a conversation with any person, that my mindset said, no matter what, I will learn something out of this conversation, even though if it's just as simple as standing at the grocery store at the checkout line and having some interaction with the lady that is, cashiering your stuff out, checking your stuff out.
Yeah.
There's always something that somebody will say that you never heard before, or you never looked at it that way. And I feel like when we go through life with a mindset of actually we're learning from every person that we're interacting with, or from every situation, then I feel like when we come home, it's like, oh, what happened today? Oh, this person said that. That was quite interesting. Let me marinate on that. Or let me just
Well,
take that in and just, let it sit for a moment.
that takes being present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that's been a struggle for me, actually, because I'm always like living in the future or living in the past. And, I've had to pay attention to being present in the moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and another thing that you said a bit ago struck me, and that is about wealth. And I remember Robert Kiyosaki saying that true wealth is knowledge.
Mm.
I mean, money can come and go, but your
Yeah.
knowledge, nobody takes that away from you. It's
Yeah.
yours forever.
Yeah.
And
Forever.
the more you can build your wealth that way, ah, you know, what a rich life you have.
Totally. But isn't that also something that you kind of like have from the beginning? Because it seems like you never really had a real job working for somebody. To me, you come across that you always worked for yourself, that drive in you, that, right? That person that like, I can do this on my own. I want to do this for myself. And we can leave out the parts why, but just a drive of like, I really want to do this for myself, because I mean, you've been a serial entrepreneur since a long time.
Yes. And actually, I started when I was 12.
Wow.
I don't date my 40 years plus back to being 12, but when I was 12, I started a business picking blackberries with a girlfriend. And we picked them and we sold them around the neighborhood, door to door, and went to the local grocery stores, which of course now you'd never be allowed to do this, but just sold the blackberries to the grocery stores so that they could sell them to their customers. And the business only lasted about 6 weeks because we got so sick of it. But but that was my first really, other than babysitting and that kind of thing, that was my first little, business that I created. And that was a good experience. Again, I would go to sleep and just have blackberries swimming around my dreams. I didn't like that. But then, I did have jobs. I started working uh, summers, part-time, after school, weekends when I was, early teens, mid-teens, and
Mm.
just always wanted to work. In fact, I think I was 9 when I asked my dad, "Can I get a job at your office? Can I lick stamps or whatever?" And I just was so ambitious. And so I did work for other people though,
Mm.
until the early 80s, and then I decided, no, it's time for me to go out on my own. And what it was, the trigger was I had taken a job in Ketchikan, Alaska. I grew up in Seattle, but in about 1980, a friend offered me a job in his business in Ketchikan. And I went, no, I'm not moving to Ketchikan, Alaska. I'm perfectly happy here in Seattle. I have a
Right.
good job, my friends, my family, all that. But he was a good salesman. And I thought, what am I going to think about myself when I'm, 85 and looking back at my life? What am I going to think if I didn't take this chance? You know? So I thought, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing would be that I'd hate it and I'd go back to Seattle and I'd start over. So I went, and about less than a year into that, I realized that I did not like the situation. My Ketchikan was, well, it was okay. It rained way too much, but I felt that the owners of the business were making some decisions that I couldn't get behind. And I told them about it, and they said, "Thank you very much for sharing your viewpoint, but this is what we're going to do." And then I just said to myself, I can't support this, so I need to leave. And so I went back to Seattle and visited with my dad, who was an entrepreneur and had been for decades. And so, okay, well, this is the idea that I have. I'm going to move to Anchorage and I'm going to start this little business, and this is what I'm going to do. What do you think? And his response was, sure, give it a try. There was never any, are you sure you can do that? And how are you going to, so I think that environment that I grew up in was a big help to me. And so I moved to Anchorage and I started this little business. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was doing marketing consulting, specializing in tourism, because that's the industry that I grew up in. And I felt like I knew what to tell my clients because I'd been in it for a while. I was 20 something. I knew everything. And then I realized that my clients needed to have advertising placed for them, not just, me advising them. They actually needed the work done. And well, I don't know anything about being an advertising agency, but I had a friend who worked in advertising. So I took him to lunch and I said, okay, this is what I'm thinking. I don't know anything about this. Can I do this? And, what advice do you have? He said, sure, just jump in and, you'll figure it out, learn as you go. And so I did. So I just jumped in and, yeah, I made mistakes. I floundered around, but I figured it out. And that's kind of been the path for my life. It's just, yeah, just start something and then figure it out. If it's, you try one thing and it's not working, okay, try something else and just don't give up. And that's the way I went. And, shortly after I moved to Anchorage, I met this guy who had an office across the hall from me, and he was selling real estate and doing this thing called roommate finders, where he was matching people up with the housing in Anchorage was very, very tight. So people needed to share apartments and houses and so forth. And so he would match them up. What kind of roommate do you want? Do you want somebody with pets, no pets, smoking, no smoking, male, female, all this kind of stuff. And he had this little matchmaking service for roommates. And I thought, boy, that's an ingenious approach. So I was impressed with that. And then he started noticing that I was flying to Hawaii because some of my first clients were tourism businesses that were located in Hawaii. And so I would have to go there to learn about the product that I was representing. And he said, going to Hawaii again? And I said, yeah. Well, how do you do that? And, I like Hawaii. I want to go to Hawaii. And so he figured out he could come at it from a real estate perspective and go to people in Alaska who had vacation rental condos in Hawaii. And he would say, I'll represent you. I'll book your condos for you and you pay me a commission. And, that's how he got started. And then I said, well, but that's not really how it works in tourism. That's kind of odd. You're advertising in the classifieds. I mean, that's just, nobody does that, because I was coming at it from a traditional perspective. And anyway, I started convincing him to make a package out of it and add the rental car and the inter-island air and all that. And those happened to be the companies I was representing. But anyway, so that grew. And then, it was like, oh, now you need to add in the airfare to get them to Hawaii from Alaska. And so I helped him figure out how to do that. By this time we were married and we started.
Okay, it's your husband. I figured it's your husband, but I didn't want it to take your word.
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah. We got married, less than a year after we met. And so I still had my business, but I was, advising him and helping him and, working on his marketing and so forth. And then, gosh, several years into our marriage, he finally convinced me that, I need you to help me run this business. And I went, oh, because I always thought that, oh, we can't work together. We kill each other. And two type A personalities, But
Right.
I did. I left my little business behind and went full time into the business that he started, which of course was our business by this time. And that's when, we just started growing it together. And we had lots of roadblocks and hurdles and challenges, and we would just figure it out. and just, I had a little motto that there's no such thing as a dead end. So you just find a way
Mhm.
over it, around it, under it, through it, blast it up,
Mhm.
do something,
Mhm.
get rid of that roadblock. And
Yeah.
that's how we gradually succeeded. And lots of uh, mentoring by people like Robert Kiyosaki. And that's when we learned from him. He told us the names of a couple of books that we read that really turned the tide for us and taught us to get out of the day-to-day operations of the company and set up systems and nurture our team and our culture. And we did that. And because one of the things that set us apart is that when we read books or took classes, we actually applied the things that we learned, we executed. And so
Right.
many people don't. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big piece of advice for anybody, whether you're starting out in business or you've been in it for a long time, doesn't matter. You learn something, you do it, you try it, you take
Mhm.
action. The
Mhm.
universe rewards action.
Mhm.
It doesn't
Mhm.
reward sitting there and thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, so
Mhm.
that's what we did. And it took us 5 years to get the company to the point where the team and the culture and all that could carry it without us being there all the time. And then we realized we could hire a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer, turn the day-to-day operations over to them. And then we bought a home on Maui, which is where I am right now, our second home on Maui that we've had for 25 years. And then several years later, after they'd grown the business to 8 digits in annual revenue, we sold it to Alaska Airlines. And then we went on and created other businesses because we
Yeah.
saw opportunities and we would just go for it. It didn't matter that we really didn't know what we were doing. We just went for it.
Mm. What a story. And
Yeah.
I like the most thing that stands out for me. I mean, there's so many things, but like the most thing that stands out for me is the part when you said you need to apply what you learned. And no matter if you don't have the answer, you don't know how it will work out, you don't maybe have every single detail, and you don't have everything as detailed correctly on a piece of paper, execution by execution, step by step. But if that's something that really sounds good to you and you can visualize it and it feels good here and you have the opportunity, I'm so with it just to really jump in that cold water and just while you're swimming, you'll figure it out. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that's really such a big holdback for people to say, I haven't figured out this part of financing. I haven't figured out this part of childcare. I haven't figured out how I'm gonna do my entrepreneurial business and I'm still working full time. And so I feel like when we just allow ourselves to really, in a sense, do what we feel versus do what we thought, kind of like converse that and be just more like, how does it really feel to me? Because if I trust myself and this really makes sense to me in my own mind, no matter how unrealistic it might be for anybody else out there, but it does feel good to me and it makes sense to me, why wouldn't it work out somehow? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think just learning the lessons of being open to just in a sense living life while building. And I think when you said, you're either a person that lives in the future or you live in the past, I like staying in that moment. I think that is so priceless and it's so incredible when you really get the concept of how you maintain for yourself in that here and now moment. How incredible. Those opportunities are just such an asset. But if they become the drive of life, I feel like sometimes we're missing out on actually living life, because we're so driven, we're so focused, we're so worried or anxious or whatever about if this doesn't go through, then what will that mean? And if this doesn't happen this way, like kind of like working out of a need versus working out of faith, of like, I thought about it, I prayed about it, this will be okay for me. And if it doesn't work out, something else will open up for me to kind of like find my way there, even though I didn't thought about it, even though I didn't plan it in my original plan, but like I trusted that I wanted to do this and to just
Yeah.
start walking.
Well, you said the word faith. And
Yeah.
I was just thinking that just before you said it, because I think that's what we have to have is faith, or you
Mm.
could call it trust. trust in the universe. And you have to have confidence in yourself.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's hard, but
Yeah.
really just having faith that it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. You said something else earlier about, life happening for you. And
Yeah.
I've been studying with Tony Robbins recently, and he says, life happens for you, not to
Mm.
you. But
Mm.
sometimes it certainly feels like it's happening to you, and it
Yeah.
hurts and it's painful. And it's like,
Yeah.
why is this happening? This, whatever the agony is that you're
Yeah.
experiencing. And to
Right.
be able to step back and say, okay, there's something in here. There's something in here that's for me. What is it?
Mhm.
And sometimes
Mhm.
you have to wait for that answer. Maybe it's not right in front of you. Maybe it's not immediate, but trust that it will be
Mhm.
revealed to you. And
Mhm.
I think that's a big thing. And just know that whatever the path is, whatever choices you make, you'll be okay. Really, you'll be okay. And it will
Mhm.
all work out. And maybe it
Mhm.
doesn't work out the way you pictured. My life certainly
Mhm.
hasn't worked out the way I pictured it would. It's been better in a lot of ways, and some ways maybe not so much. But
Right.
it's a journey, and it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And we just need to keep going and look for the lessons, look for the opportunities, and
Mm.
you know just
Yeah.
take the chance, make the
Yeah.
choices, and go with it.
Yeah. It's, like you said earlier, the universe delivers. And I feel like I can speak from my own personal experience. The minute I really took a step forward, even though I didn't have the answers, even though I did not know, it somehow made 10 steps for me towards me. All I
Mm,
had to do is just one step saying, okay, this I'm showing you, I'm doing this right now. This is my intention. I'm executing it in an action as well. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden, 10 steps were done for me coming my way. And when you said, trust, that's big for me because in the end, if you really don't believe that you will be having a good life or you are living a good life in a sense, because sometimes we're still focused on the outcome and we maybe want, our goal might be to have like a beautiful home or a beautiful car or whatever, but we don't have that. Sometimes it's so easy to fall off, especially the part that you said, don't give up even though don't get the answers, not for days but years sometimes you will not see a result. And to
yeah,
not fall off your trust your life attitude wagon, I think
yeah.
that's really the key, where I personally found myself asking God, can't you just give me a break? What do you want from me? What, like, seriously, what is it that you want? I'm like
Yeah,
trying, I'm doing, I'm executing, I'm like, what is this not that you want me to do? Then please show me if it's not, and
yeah,
I started to doubt, because my dream
yeah.
of being a hospitality expert and coach and training hospitality staff, I had this dream since I'm 16 years old. Just,
Mhm.
this has been a long time in work in progress, but, fear of me being like, well, I want to travel, I need money. So it's good to be in this great hotel that pays me and I get to travel, was more appealing to me for a period of my life versus saying, I'm completely going out on my own with no safety net.
Yeah,
That just came later for me, when my
yeah,
inner confidence was bigger and growing and becoming grown up. That's when I was like, you know what? I'm okay. I can do this. Like, I'll be
yeah,
fine. Somehow I'll figure it out. But really, in between, I had several moments, weeks, where I was like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Did I pick the
oh
right
yeah.
thing for? So
Well,
how
I
did
think
that ever happen to
everyone,
you?
oh yeah, everybody has those moments. It's like, oh my God,
Mm.
the revenue's not coming in the way I thought it
Mm.
would, or I needed a few more clients, or whatever the situation was. Yes, things happen that really throw you for a loop, and you're like, what am I doing? And
Yeah.
yes, and sometimes the universe is telling you you have to change course. Sometimes it is. And so you have to pay attention to that. And I did that a few times in my marketing and advertising business. I changed course a few times.
Mm.
And I wasn't happy. I wasn't, doing what I thought I wanted to do when I was just had my own business. And so I merged my business in with another advertising agency because I thought, oh, this will be good because I'll have more support around me and so forth. So I became a co-owner in another agency. And then, gosh, it was a year later, I was coming back from Europe and I had a long flight and I was reading Tony Robbins's, I think it was his first book, Unlimited Power. And that book just spoke to me, and something in it, I don't remember the exact passage or paragraph or chapter or whatever, but by the time that flight landed, I'm like, I need to get out of this. This is not working for me either. And so then I basically bought my company back from the company that I'd merged into, is that I'm going a different route. And I think what it was is that I saw that the advertising part of it was chasing the advertising revenue more than doing what the customer really needed.
Mm.
And I didn't like that. It didn't sit well with me. So I went back to not doing the advertising, but just working with the customers and finding out what it was that they needed. And then that business really took off. So it was, another incarnation. I changed the name and all that and had different clients. And and about that same time or shortly after that, um, the tourism business that my husband created and that I joined had a roadblock, and it was a big one. The air service between Alaska and Hawaii, we had been using scheduled air carriers, and they stopped flying between Alaska and Hawaii, and we had no way to get our people, our customers, to Hawaii. And I was like, oh my God, okay, now what? And it was horrible. I mean, our revenue just went down to, practically nothing. And we had staff and we didn't have the money to pay them. So we were taking cash advances on our credit cards to make the payroll. And we looked at each other and said, oh my God, should we close the doors? Is this, is this the end of this? What should we do? And, we just kind of dug deep and did that sort of, I don't know if you could say that we prayed on it, but we certainly looked inside, deep inside, and said, what do we need to do? And the answer was, no, this is a service, a product that the people of Alaska need and want, and we have to find a way to provide it to them. They want to go to Hawaii. They want to get out of the cold winter, and we need to find a way. And once we made that decision, it wasn't long before my husband found an airplane that had enough hours sitting on the ground in Anchorage between some other flights that it was doing to allow us to make a round trip with that plane between Anchorage and Honolulu. So he approached them and said, can we charter this plane? And he worked it out. He negotiated it. They wanted some security, like a guarantee. We didn't have it. We were already down to the nub with using our credit cards for payroll. So he went to his mother. She had a retirement account. She was a school teacher. So she had her teacher's retirement account, and she pledged that as the collateral for this line of credit that we needed to secure this charter. And my God, that was so motivational. Make sure that we sold every darn seat on that plane because we were paying the same amount for the charter, whether we sold one seat or all of them. So that was a test. And it was a summertime charter, which also everybody thought we were crazy because, well, it's summertime. People don't fly to Hawaii in the summer. That we're Alaskans. We stay in Alaska in the summer. And no, I looked at the numbers for the number of people that we had carried on the scheduled carriers over the past several summers. I went, no, we've got the numbers. We can do this. We've proven it. So we did it. And it succeeded. And I think we sold every seat. And it was amazing. So then, of course, we were emboldened to go ahead and find other airplanes, bigger airplanes, longer charter contracts. And we kept going, and the company grew and grew and grew. So yeah, that's an example of taking a real moment of adversity and challenge and like, oh my God, this, this could be the end, and turning it around, saying, no, it's not the end.
Do you think it was mindset? Do you think it started in your minds, in your thought forms of really deciding between the two of you, like looking at the good and the bad and kind of like having that list, like plus and minus, and we're writing everything down. And then now we're having a conversation, but actually deciding mentally
Yeah.
both that we want this to continue and we'll find a way. Do you believe that your thought
Yes.
forms actually had that much power really to make a shift so big in the universe that the energies would just shift and like kind of like stuff started to place it in itself where it needed to be placed?
Well, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. I'm not sure that I've expressed it in that way before, and I love it. But yes, I think part of it was that our intention was to serve. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't about how much money can we make. It
Right.
was we wanted to do this
Yeah.
for Alaska. And we kind of joked that, it was a public service, that we
Yeah.
were providing. Um,
Mhm.
but I think, yes, mindset, guts, just, being able to take a big gulp and say, we're going to take this risk. I mean, we risked everything. We risked his mother's everything. And we were gambling on us and on an idea, and yet we had some facts and figures to back us up. You
Sure.
said something before about, do your homework and make sure you have a safety net and so forth. Well, our
Right.
numbers were our safety net. We knew that the market was there, so we just had to put it out there to the market, and
Mhm.
that's what we did. And I think that when you're guided by um, a vision that you have and you're willing to take take the risks, have the guts, have the determination and the
Mhm.
persistence. I mean, we worked our butts off that summer. And, but at this point, that's when I was really 100% in this business, and I left my other little marketing consulting business. No,
Right.
this was too important. I needed to put all my
Yeah.
energy into this. And so that's what we did, and we made it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely having the right intention behind projects too.
Yeah.
Because I really sometimes had opportunities to work, for instance, with clients that really would have brought me in a good paycheck for me to be like 2 years totally in a safe area. But it was just sometimes you got to really have that right intention when you come into, your heart needs to be pure about it, and the why should be really something that makes sense not only for you but also for the environment around you, because I feel like we all are energy, and so it has a ripple effect, and if my energy comes in to be all selfish and it's all about me and nobody else matters, I feel like that's what I would attract towards me. But if my own energy naturally is like, I'm not only doing this for me, do I deserve a bonus because I'm pulling this off? Absolutely, come on. But is it
Yeah.
really the money that I'm after, or is it really because I'm trying to create something where others can benefit from it and where others are being happy? Because, like you said, when it's cold or just getting a mental break, what better place to
Yeah.
go than on a beautiful island? And
Yeah.
you don't know why these people go on the flight. You don't know if they're going through a
No.
divorce. You don't know if they're happy. You don't know if they're internally broken, if they're whole. We don't know. All we
Right.
know is that we're trying to provide a service that fundamentally, hopefully, will help people to feel good. And
Yes.
I think when
That
that,
that really did drive us is
yeah,
giving people that happiness and
right,
that R&R that they needed. And it was
yeah,
like, yes, go to Hawaii, get recharged,
yeah,
have a break. And
yeah,
we felt very important that it was very important for the people to experience this
yeah,
relaxation, recreation,
yeah,
rest. It was all
right,
so,
right.
so wonderful. And you know what? When we made that decision, we
Mm,
weren't making millions at that point.
mm,
We were doing okay, but it wasn't big bucks that we were making. But by making that decision and taking that step, taking that risk, we then paved the way for us to make millions. We had no idea that that's what we were doing when we made that decision. That was not part of the intention. It was a
right,
result of the intention that we made
right,
millions. And
right.
yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I'm very happy that we
Yeah,
did, but
yeah.
but that
No,
was a
but
byproduct.
Right, but I also feel like that's exactly how, the universe works, or for me, how in my life God had worked, like it was always that, this is really my pure intention. I'm bringing it to you, and I hope it aligns with your plan for me, because if it doesn't, I might be crushed. But if it does, maybe you can help out a little, and I think it's really always a give and take. Like, as long as we, in any situation, I feel like as long as we're respectful of that reciprocity aspect and that balance and harmony between, this is what I need, but this is also what you need, and we convey that to each other verbally or non-verbally. I think those are really the best projects that ever happen. And it could be big as your amazing business, but it could be also as small as just starting a network group, for instance, because
Sure.
it's really about attracting the right energy and the right people that are chiming in to actually make that dream happen. Because this wasn't just about you and your brain and your husband's brain and your talents and your gifts and your drive, but this was certainly also about everybody that was in your team making this work, being patient with the process, having faith
Yeah.
that you will come through for them. And I
Yeah.
think you can attract such group if your heart isn't in a right spot, if that makes any sense. Because it
It
just
does.
logically doesn't make sense to me. If you are internally really like a rude person, or like don't care about anything or anyone, then I don't think you attract really nice people. And if you do, they figure it out and then they leave,
Well, I
you
think
know?
what you're speaking to is what I call, and many people call, the culture of an
Mm,
organization. And it doesn't
mm,
matter how small the organization is. The organization could be a solopreneur company. Um,
mm,
but your culture is an expression of your values and your
yeah.
principles. And that's what you're talking about, is where are you coming from your heart? And what are your intentions? And this is something that needs to be built into every business, no matter how small. And then it needs to be communicated too, so that the people that you're working with, whether they're on your team or whether they're people that you're serving or vendors that
Mm,
you're working with, that they know that this is what you stand for. And this is what's
mm,
important to you. And I think that too many businesses lose sight of that culture. They may have made that statement at some point and then they get away from it and they start chasing the dollar rather than the intention and the purpose. And,
mm.
I see particularly really, really large corporations get away from that. And it's like, oh, it's so sad and it's so frustrating to see that the way that they treat people, either
Mm,
customers or, people in their company, their employees, not with the right intention, not with the right energy, not
yeah,
with the right amount of caring. And
yeah.
that's not something I think that's going to sustain success for a long
Mm.
time. Yeah, you might be successful for a while and just, and reap all the money that you can out of a situation, but I don't think that that's what really breathes life into an organization for the long term.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. It's really about people in general. You know what I mean? Like, it's really about people in general. And me being in hospitality, I like always look at it from both sides. It's like the employee part and the investor and the owner, but then there's also the guest, right? And so we're
Yes.
all doing the same thing for each other. An owner, an investor is supposed to be catering to their staff the very same way that he expects his staff to cater to his guests. But
Yes.
if that if that isn't really in alignment, where, for instance, and I'm not saying that that's always how it is, I'm just giving pure examples where an
Oh,
owner would have the expectation of, like, you got to be here on time, you have to have extra hours for me, you have to be available whenever I need you to, you have to suck it up with difficult guests or whatever, whatever. But I will not pay you on time, or I will not listen to you when you're telling me, you need maybe a mental day, or you have
yeah,
some family issues happening in your own private life. I feel like it's really a give and take, because it's not anymore that people have to stay at a job if they're not really happy. And I'm not saying we have to present a red carpet and we have rainbow and candy every day at work.
yeah, yeah,
That's not what I'm necessarily saying, but
yeah.
I am speaking certainly of respect and being valued and being acknowledged, that you actually here every day building my dream versus your own, you
Absolutely.
know? And I feel like,
Absolutely.
when we don't forget that, because guests have the choice to fly with anybody or to go and dine anywhere or sleep in any establishment, so do employees now have the choice to say, I want to stay here because I'm being treated respectfully and in a kind way. And I
Yes.
also give. Again, it's a give and take, right? Like an employee cannot say, oh yeah, I break all the glasses. I don't care if I lose the tray. Oh, you gave me an apron. Oh, I lost it. Can I have a new one? Oh, I don't have my
Yeah.
warranty. I don't know. But then they expect kindness and respect. And when they're asking for requests of days, to be just, okay, that's no problem. Like it has to
Yeah.
be a
It
nice
has to go both
balance.
ways. Well, we had
Exactly.
the cornerstone of our culture was an acronym that my husband created called WERQ. And the
Mhm.
W stood for win-win, which is exactly what you're talking about, is that it has to be a win-win or even a win-win-win.
Right.
Everybody needs to win. So you need to consider all of the people that are involved. And the E stands for efficiency. So,
Mm.
do it right the first time, make it efficient, use automation and technology and so forth to make it easy and smooth for your customers and for your employees. And the R is responsibility, which we talked about before. But you have
Yeah.
to be responsible to your customers, to your employees, to your vendors,
Right.
and it's financial responsibility. It's responsibility for delivering the product that you say you're going to deliver and in the way you're going to
Mm.
deliver it on time. And all of
Mm.
that, taking full responsibility and expecting others to take responsibility too. Like you were talking about an
Mm.
employee who just doesn't care and, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
throw this away or waste this. No, that's not
Yeah.
being responsible either. So it has to go, full circle on that. And then the
Mm.
Q is quality, making sure that you're delivering a quality product and that, you stand for something in a quality way. Quality can have
Mm.
many, many aspects to it, many
Right.
sides. And,
Right.
we instilled this WERQ philosophy in our team. We talked about it all the time. And when we hired new people, we trained them on it. And they were able to use it to make decisions to, if there was a customer issue, we would say, well, WERQ, is it a win-win? Are we being efficient? Are we taking responsibility? Is it, and then they could say, okay, yeah, if I use these guidelines, I can make the right decision. And then we would stand by them. But if they used that as a guideline,
Mm.
then they were okay. And
Yeah.
so these are the things that can be built into any company, whether it's a WERQ or whatever your values and principles are. You
Right.
need to have your company imbued with those
Mm.
principles, values, guidelines. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, exactly. And I think it's always important, to have people like that in your corner as business mentors and business educational people that help us through it, because we don't know it all. And again, even if I know a topic that you already know, don't you think us collaborating with our beautiful minds together is so much more cooler, instead of me just believing that whatever I had in my mind was the right thing? This way, I would get an opportunity to share and to explore the things that are in your brain, and we get to create something that is just benefiting my own company, which again is so valuable if you want to be standing out from the crowd, to really
Yeah.
have something created that really fits you as the person that you are, but also the business that you're driving, so that your
Yeah.
own persona never goes under and it's never been enslaved into your business. And you still get to allow to be who you are, but with an asset of it displaying that in the world with your business, like the
Mhm.
experience that you are now providing for whoever is enjoying your services of any kind, is really what this is all about. It's
Yes.
about the experience that when I encounter with you, how do I feel about that? Like
Mhm.
what do I like? Do I feel good, or do I feel down? Do I feel, neglected or dismissed? Or do I feel, oh, okay, I was heard, even though I'm just an employee, not even though, but even if I'm an
Yeah.
employee in this business, I'm still being heard. I'm still being
Yeah.
acknowledged. And I think
Yes,
that's really important. And so, yeah, I'm
it
happy that
is.
you, because that's currently what you do, right, Mr. Al? Like this isn't that currently what you do with on your own? Because I wanted to ask you on anyway, what's next? 'Cause, we talked about so many things that happened and are ongoing, but what is currently something that you bother
Yeah.
yourself with these days?
Well, we have a few businesses that are just ongoing and pretty much run themselves, but
Uh,
I've started another one, and this one is all about teaching, and it's all
mm,
about giving to others the benefit of the 40 plus years of experience that I have. And I want to teach business owners how to be able to live their dream and still have a successful business like we've
mhm.
done, because I think it's so important to enjoy your life. And
Sure.
yes, it's important to have a successful company. I love that. I love success. I love money. Um, but let's enjoy life too. And let's not be a slave to our businesses. And too many
Mm,
business owners are in the situation where we were a few decades ago, where we were enslaved by our business
mm,
because the company was growing so fast and we were just trying to keep all the balls in the air, and our personal life was definitely suffering. Our health was suffering and all of that. And I'd like to help thousands of business owners not go through that, and I
mm,
can show you, here's how you can stop doing that. Here's how you
mm,
can get your organization to run in a more efficient manner so that you can step back and be the owner of the business and not just the operator. And you
mm,
can be the orchestra leader and make sure that all the tunes are being played beautifully without having to play
mm.
all the instruments yourself. So
Yeah. That's so
so
important,
that's what I'm
to
doing.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I have an online course. I'm starting
Mhm,
a mastermind program that will be a year-long program with monthly calls with me, and it'll be a small group of business owners, 7 and 8 digit businesses that we can learn from each other, and I will guide the conversation and use the 6 principles that are at the foundation of my course. And these are the principles that I found throughout my career. These are the most important principles for building a strong,
mm,
sustainable business, and
mm.
that's what I teach. So I'd love to get the word out there and have people
Yeah,
take advantage of everything that I've done, all the mistakes that I've made. Let me make it easier
yeah,
for you.
yeah, yeah. And this is so wonderful. And if it's okay with you, I would love to place like a link of either your
Oh,
website or
please.
how if somebody hears this that would love to join, I would love if we
Yes,
can share a
please.
link. And yeah, okay, great,
Yes.
awesome. That will be wonderful.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
the website is ralwest.com, RALWEST
Yeah,
dot com.
but I will put it in description in
Thank
case,
you.
that way just a link so you can just click on there and be guided right to you. I think, just to make
Perfect.
it easier again on people. But
Perfect.
this was such wonderful conversation. I'm so very grateful that you were really opening up your thoughts and your truth, and you share transparency, and I think you dropped thousand golden nuggets here in this conversation, and it was just really interesting looking inside of a person like you and really finding out these amazing stories that you shared today. So I'm so grateful that
Mm.
you did that today.
You're
It was
you're
it was a
welcome,
wonderful
Žana.
conversation.
Thank you for having me, and you're a lovely host, and you have a wonderful outlook, and I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you. I received that from you. Thank you so much. Well, podcast lovers, another great one. If you have anything to share, like I said, my mic is always open. It could be about this topic, it could be about any other topic. Come and be my guest. Join the R&R movement in the community. Until then, stay rooted, stay grounded, and always stay connected to love, the strongest force in the universe.